you know, besides that, not only are these weird stereotypes of D&D players not true, but it's actually the opposite. It seems like they're, you know, they might not be super conventional, but they're social, they're charming, they seem like absolutely fantastic people.
Yeah.
So, you know, where are we getting those stereotypes? And, you know, I think it does really help people socialize. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I write a lot about that in the book, and that is, you know, the two parts of the book that I'm trying to track are my own personal relationship. The part that is a self-reflective journey is about me having turned away from Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy, my interest in all this stuff as a teenager. I went away to college, stopped, decided I was going to go to college and remake myself. In a way, a kind of role play. Like, I was accustomed to playing role-playing in the real world, in the game world. I was going to go away to this private arts college and not be that geeky kid anymore and try to hang out with the cool crowd and become an actor or a filmmaker or an artist or something like that. And I made a conscious decision to turn away from that because I had a lot of ambivalence. Even though I knew that D&D was a cool game that I enjoyed and was absolutely sort of saved my ass in high school, kind of got me through it and got me through a difficult home life situation. It was something that I felt quite ambivalent about. So I wanted to go on this journey of self-acceptance and sort of embracing my inner geek. And when my book came out, part of my mission was I hoped to start to debunk some of these stereotypes. And I printed up all these T-shirts, and this is one of them, which is it says Geek Pride on the front of it, which is sort of, you know, my personal mission to kind of, you know, if previous civil rights battles in our country have been based around race or gender or sexual orientation, you know, you could argue that the next one is really about subcultures, and it's about you know, geek rights. You know, that it's not fair to make fun of the geek just because he's into computer programming or he's into LARPing, live action role playing, or because he's into online gaming. It's no more fair to make fun of that guy as it is to make fun of, you know, the kid who I don't know, is you know, just kind of uncoordinated or doesn't have friends or has Down syndrome or whatever it might be. So there's a huge cultural backlash, not backlash, that's not the right word, but a cultural prejudice against people who do things that seem to be not quite of the norm. And I don't think this is unique to gaming. I think that anytime somebody's doing something different that doesn't quite fit in, we're apt to look at them strange. And I think that's normal, I think that's human nature, and I think to stereotype other groups is normal and natural. And I would say that the Geek Pride movement, as it were, has made a lot of advances. And I think that it is true that the people who play games now are no longer simply just the kids who weren't going to be on the football team. Now there are jocks who play online games. There are jocks who play Xbox and PlayStation games. Now their game world may be sports, football, basketball, baseball. They may not be Lord of the Rings, but nonetheless, the idea that you sit down and play a game with your friends and it is about a kind of virtual experience where you're doing a little bit of role-playing is less foreign today than it was 25 years ago when I played Dungeons & Dragons back in the dark days of the Reagan administration, back in the 70s and 80s. But the stereotypes have a lot to do with, I think, what I mentioned earlier, that we can't play games as we grow older. We have to be serious, and we can't do things that are frivolous. And we can't play games or do things that are not part of what are American, at least from American cultural norms, acceptable. Yes, as you mentioned, if you want to paint yourself red, white, and blue, strip to the waist, and get completely drunk and go to a football game and just behave out of control as a football fan, that is normal and accepted, and in a way expected behavior. But if you do the same thing and you're in your park and you're dressed up in a medieval tunic, then in some way you're a freak. But it's changing. It's changing slowly, and I think for the better. I hope, anyway. That's one of the things I noticed in the book, and to me that's a happy ending, you know, to that cultural part.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're laughing.
I'm thinking about. Just quick question. I'm curious. This can be on the DL or whatever, but I mean, in the typical narrative that mainstream culture likes to use, i.e. sports, of, you know, epic quest and adventure. We are the Patriots and we are going to win, and this noble quest and all of that, involves a lot of alcohol. At these LARPs, the live action role plays, are you guys partying down? Are you guys going crazy with the mead?
Well, it's funny you mention that. It's funny you mention that because I don't know if this is the case with all live, the live action role playing game situation. The one that I participated in my book, I have a chapter where I go to Georgia. I found a live action role playing group down there outside of Atlanta, and I hang out with them for the weekend. And in fact, the chapter opens with this encounter I have where I'm in costume, and these three drunken Scandinavian Viking types show up, and they sort of confront me and ask me who I am, and they have these, one of them is named like Leif Thorson, and they started telling me stories of their battles that they went on during the day, and they are, to my mind, completely drunk. I later learned that they are not drunk at all, but they're pretending to be drunk, because this particular LARP is a dry LARP. They're not allowed to drink during the course of the game. I don't know if it's their rule or if it's simply because they were renting a state park and the state park has rules that you can't have alcohol. I'm not sure. The LARPing community that I understand, the ones that I understand, I think that the events tend to be substance free. That said, the Society for Creative Anachronism, which I mentioned earlier, I spent a week camping with them at this huge event they do in western Pennsylvania called the Pensick War, where there's about 10 to 12,000 people who camp every summer. It's amazing. Hundreds of these period medieval tents. People dressed in full suits of armor, these giant battles that happen. People using not necessarily foam rubber swords, but wooden ones. And because they're wearing full suits of armor, they can really strike hard, full force, and really use all their might on all their strength, and they don't actually end up hurting each other. People might break a rib or something like that. But those people at nighttime, they have these enormous parties. And there, it's anything goes. And there's meat is flowing, and beer is flowing, and wine is flowing, and there's huge bonfires, and there's dancing, and there's music and drumming circles, and people telling stories, and it's a huge social event. And those people are definitely, for those people who are consumers of alcohol, are definitely getting drunk every night.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what's beautiful about it, because they're trying to recreate this sense of during the day we fight our battles, and at night we sit around the campfire and we tell stories about it. And if you and I were fighting during the day and you beat the crap out of me or I beat the crap out of you, well, at nighttime we can, hold hands and have wasn't that great what happened on the battlefield today, and now we're buddies, right? We're clinking our glasses together.
Right.
And that is something that a lot of these games are trying to recreate, right? We're a storytelling